Hey, welcome to Mended Futures, where real stories remind us that broken doesn't mean the end. It's just the beginning of something new.
I'm Evan Bergener.
And I'm Liz Mahan. We're the new Season 2 hosts, and together our goal is to share powerful, true stories of resilience, redemption, and hope.
Each week, we'll walk with people through the valleys and celebrate the moments when light breaks through.
Because every future can be mended, one story at a time.
Welcome to the Mended Futures Podcast. Today, we have LaShonda Brown as our guest. She is the founder of Bootstrap Biz Advice. She's a keynote speaker, tech educator, and creator, and so much more. LaShonda, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, we're truly so excited you're here. I know that Evan kind of explained, the roles that you have and what you do professionally, but tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're passionate about personally, what you do professionally, all of that jazz.
Yeah, I'll talk about personally first because I rarely get to talk about the real life I have outside of my computer.
Yeah.
So I was actually a theater major at Liberty.
Love.
And so I utilize those scripting skills and performance, creating content online. But locally, I have the opportunity to sing with a lot of local groups. I've done local theater productions. I do a lot of volunteer work through Rotary. And so what I love is I very much have an online life, but my offline life is just as fulfilling. And so I really do enjoy being engaged in the community through the arts and then through volunteerism. But in terms of professionally, what I've noticed is my husband and I started our first business in 2011. And in Lynchburg, there aren't that many opportunities to learn about tech and film because it's a pretty small place. And so after 10 years of running our business, I thought, man, I would love an opportunity to teach people what I learned. How are we using social media to make a living? And how are we creating video content in a way to grow a business? And so that is where I transitioned and started another LLC to teach people. And that took me not only teaching locally, but teaching all around the world. So it's cool because I get to be the mentor now that I wish I'd had way back when. And so it's a really fun job because I get to help other people do what I was able to accomplish with my husband and our business.
I love that. And that's such a gift. I think that's an important way to kind of view what you do is, would this have been helpful to younger me? So I think that's really cool that now you get to do that for people and be a mentor and show people an example of, hey, this is what you can do. So I think that's really great that you're giving people resources in that way. That's awesome.
Yeah, I like to describe it as my life is the case study, So let's look back and see, how did we get here?
Yeah.
How did that happen? What's working now if I had to start all over again? And so that kind of fuels the content that I create and the curriculum that I develop.
I love that. That's so awesome. So how did you kind of get into the tech world? I know you said theater is like more of your background and what you studied. How did you kind of make that transition?
Yeah, so I've lived like 9 lives.
Love.
And so I think there was a point where I was getting a lot of people asking me the same question over and over. And so I thought, you know what, if I just made a video about this, then I could just send them the link and I wouldn't have to keep explaining this.
Right.
And so I started a YouTube channel just as a place to tell people how to do stuff in MailChimp. It was not anything remarkable. But I started to realize there are more people watching this than the people I've sent the link to, because where are these views coming from? And so over time, I would continue to post content there. And so that's how I got involved with tech, because I had to use tech to help run my husband's video production company. And so I would talk about the tech tools that I was using. And so the one that got the most notoriety was Canva. And so Canva started to notice, like, this girl's doing all these tutorials about Canva. And they made me a Canva certified creative. That evolved over time into being a Canva verified expert. And so now I work one-on-one with them, still as like a freelancer, but I get to actually work with the Canva team on new features they create and educating people on how to get the most out of their subscriptions.
That's amazing. That's so cool.
It's really cool.
Wow.
Just came back from Canva Create in LA. So that was an unbelievable experience. So, something small that started with just me talking to my computer with a broken Yeti mic led to something greater later on. And so I think so many people that people watch online had really humble beginnings. And I think as long as you have an internet connection and something to say, you can find your spot online.
100%. Yeah. And you never know where it could go either.
Oh, yeah. You have no clue.
Yeah.
No clue.
No, I love that. That's so awesome.
Yeah, I
So
love
cool.
how you kind of described you saw a gap in opportunity, like this opportunity, the specific area around our area. And instead of looking around for like, why isn't anybody doing this? You blazed that trail and said, well, I'll do this. So I imagine there wasn't a super accessible playbook for that kind of thing. What was it like going through that process of starting it up on your own?
Mm-hmm.
And like, I'm sure there's plenty of learning experiences along the way. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think the most difficult thing when you're doing something that maybe hasn't been done where you live. I'm not going to say it hasn't been done,
Right.
but if it hasn't been done where you live, where you can just go ask people for advice or glean from their experience, you almost have to be a little fearless and just say, look, I'm just going to try it and hold it with an open hand. Some things might work, some things may not. It's okay. It was never meant to be my job when I started doing it. It was just something that I was trying, a way to help people, using YouTube more as just a tool to host a video. And so over time, I started realizing like there are people who make a whole job out of just making videos for people to watch. This is so wild. And so now we're seeing that YouTube has evolved not just as a place to upload content, but it's replacing TV for a lot of families.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you just kind of stick with things, like you can continue to learn and evolve as those different industries do. So a lot of friends that I have were early adopters of a bunch of stuff, whether it was early to Vine or early to TikTok or early to Instagram. Sometimes just getting in early has a lot of benefit, but you have to not take it so seriously when you're just learning. You have to be willing to fail, willing to learn, and willing to change. And so I think that's part of what really helped me is I wasn't putting it on this pedestal. It was just something to try, something to do, and a way to help.
I think that's amazing for sure. And especially when you're starting out, sometimes you don't even know what you don't know. So learning as you go and being gracious with yourself too, I think is really important. So I love that you kind of vocalize that too. That's awesome. I would love to know what advice you would give people who are thinking about starting out on something that maybe they're not super sure where it's going to go, or it's also a very vulnerable thing to post something on the internet and it be imperfect. So what advice would you have for people that are kind of thinking, maybe I do want to go in this direction and start this new venture, but I'm not really sure if I'll be successful or I'll be confident enough or something like that? What would you say to them?
I would just say set a micro goal. You don't have to go from 0 to 100 because 0 to something is a huge leap. And so when I first started, it's hilarious because, pretending to be somebody I wasn't in a theatrical production was not hard. Put me in a costume, put me on a stage, give me words to say, no problem.
Right.
But you put me on the internet and it's my words and it's my thoughts.
Right.
And now all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness. What are people going to say? Is this dumb? Will this make sense? And so I just started out with something small. Like, can I just make the video? I don't have to be seen on camera. It doesn't have to be very long. I don't need to get thousands of views, but just can I make a video? And then as I would watch the content, it would be like, okay, well, how can I make this like 1% better than last time? Like, oh, maybe I could say less. Maybe I could add music. Maybe this time I could do more complicated graphics. And so I think those little incremental steps over time, you'll look back and you go like, man, like I've come a long way. People see that in the gym. You don't go from not weightlifting at all to, benching 250 pounds. You got to work your way up.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Unfortunately, if you could, we would all be rich.
I'd be on
But it's
it.
a process. It's a process. And so I think that's everything. Everything is a process, but you figure out what you're comfortable with. You don't have to push yourself to like the edge of your comfortability. You can say, okay, well, I can do this, but right now I'm not comfortable being on screen yet. And then little by little, you'll be able to get to the point where honestly, you just don't take yourself so seriously.
Right.
So now I go live. Sometimes I'll go live with nothing prepared beforehand and it just kind of happens on the fly. And it's hilarious to see me now knowing where I started. I was to the point where I couldn't even have my husband in the room while I was filming when I first got started. So he would set up the camera and leave,
I love.
because I'm like, okay, I just can't having you there. I get nervous.
Right. Too much pressure.
Too much pressure. But over time, you just start to get more and more comfortable.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of what really helps when it comes to starting something new is that if you just stick with it, this stuff compounds. Just like money, it compounds over time.
Right. And I think when I think of content creators that I really enjoy seeing online, I feel like one thing that I really love is people's authenticity. And I feel like that's kind of what you're getting at too, is like the ability to be imperfect at something and trying something anyway. But I feel like if we're pretending to be someone we're not in spaces that we're in, it's not authentic and people can't connect to that. So I really love that you're embodying that. That's awesome. Super, super cool.
I think as I'm hearing you talk, I think with this kind of profession, from an outsider's perspective, a lot of times it can seem like that could be a very isolating place to be. Like you're just by yourself broadcasting out. And yes, you're getting that engagement, but it seems like you're just kind of working with yourself. But you talk a lot about collaboration and partnerships too. How do you go about cultivating that in this kind of role?
Yeah, so one of my favorite collaborations is the Worship and Tech Conference that's hosted at Liberty. And I'm doing that again at the end of this month in a couple weeks. And I've got to say, it's one of the most surreal experiences. Because like I always travel with my backpack, with my laptop in it and everything else. But to be like on campus with my backpack, to be in the front of the classroom and not at the desk is just so much fun. And so I think even if you specialize in teaching online, when you're able to teach in person, when you're able to see your students in real time, it completely changes the game. Because it's cool to see the little hearts or the comments or the likes, but ultimately when you're just talking to your computer screen all day, it's hard to kind of keep your foot in reality, and it's hard to remember what you do matters. But when you can explain something to someone and people go, oh my gosh, I have been hitting my head against the wall about that one thing, and now I know how to fix it. Thank you. Or, you know what, you've given me the courage to start a business, or you've given me the courage to write the book or do the thing. All of a sudden you go, okay, I'm not just talking to my camera. I'm not just recording my screen. I'm creating tools that are helping people to achieve things they want to do in their life. And so it just puts meaning behind it in a way that a little profile picture, a little avatar can't do. So I encourage everybody, get outside, talk to people, because when you do that, you start to realize, man, this is actually making a difference. It's not just something I'm doing for a job. It's something that's adding value.
No, I love that. I think that's really great. And I would love to know too, because I hear a lot of what you're saying, talking about like next gen. Where's your heart there? Like, is that something that you're really passionate about, is next gen and like helping pass down tools to like the next generation, like up behind you?
I think I thought that at first. I think it's natural, especially for like an older sibling, to be like, oh, I want to teach my younger siblings how to XYZ, or, because I went before them, now they can be encouraged to do it. But we're seeing in this industry that there are so many people that are being forced to pivot or are in their next assignment or next chapter. So like I have different pockets of people that I teach. I definitely teach people who are younger than me, who grew up with tech, and they're just like, okay, social media doesn't scare me. I use it for fun. I'd love to learn more about it. And that's one group. But there's also that group of like empty nester that's just like, well, I don't have kids in the house, but I'm not retired yet. Like I've got skills, I've got knowledge, but I didn't grow up, with Facebook. I didn't grow up having a website for no reason. I don't know where to start. And so there are a lot of people that I teach that are like my mom. They're people who are overwhelmed by tech, and they're just like, can you simplify it? Can you make it easier to implement? And so you'd be surprised that, you have those groups of people that are younger, groups of people that are like my mom, but even like overlooked industries. Like one of my favorite groups of people to teach are the farmers in Iowa. Like I go to Iowa and I teach young farmers how to use tech to keep their family farms open.
Wow.
So sometimes you have those opportunities where you're like, I would have never thought that I would be teaching farmers about Canva. But now that I'm in the room, I can see, they need it too. So you would just be surprised. It's not always just the next generation. Sometimes it's just being that person willing to talk to unreached groups of people.
No, that's fascinating. I mean, the farmers in Iowa is not high on the list that I think would be reaching out.
I love
for
them.
this kind of
that's
thing.
I went twice. I've been to Des Moines twice this year already.
There we go.
Incredible.
So yeah, it's pretty interesting. I mean, that's the thing. The internet is so big.
No, truly.
And so when you put it out there, you'd be surprised the people that connect the dots.
Do you find that you have to tailor a lot of your lessons specifically to your audience? Do you find that it's like very specialized between the different groups that you're reaching out to, or is it all pretty similar with just some minor tweaks?
I think people have more in common than they realize.
Yeah.
And so, your audience can help you to figure out how to apply it to their industry. So typically what I'll do, and I really enjoy using a live polling tool, because I always take a poll before I teach. Because you kind of go in with assumptions that, maybe they've never heard of Canva and they don't even have a website, or, they probably have these questions. And so when I poll them, that's when I start to see, these are actually the areas that I need to really hone in on. And so because I'm so used to live streaming and kind of going with the flow, like I will change what I intended on teaching based on how they respond to that poll. Because you can imagine if you go into a room thinking, everyone's a beginner, and you ask them a poll, do you have a Canva Pro account? And 90% of people say yes. Well, that's a whole different workshop
100%.
than someone just, this is what Canva is, And so I think that's the thrill of doing that live polling, is I'm giving them an opportunity to tell me who they are before I teach them. And then once they tell me who they are, then I go, okay, this is what matters. These are the things that we should focus on. And I think that's just kind of how learning is evolving. I don't think that you can just make a textbook about stuff and say, this will be relevant for 20 years, because things change every week. And so I think even if you're teaching in person, you have to be willing to evolve even in that scenario, because that's just how people are used to learning now.
Absolutely. I mean, I love that approach, the adaptability, being able to pivot and be like, all right, let's make this and increase the value to the audience and meet them where they're at, whether it's beginning or like, hey, we're really great at this, but like, how can we take it to the next level? That's an incredible value to those people. So
and making them feel seen too, because
it's so fun with the poll responses, because they're doing something on their phone and it's showing up on the screen. And so I think even just that, making it collaborative before you just go to the slide deck, it's like, okay, well, that's something different. That breaks me out of the monotony of, I'm in a breakout session, I'm in a workshop. And so I think that's the fun too of the way tech is evolving, is it's becoming even more fun to use tech, not just a utility.
And I think as you're talking to with the adaptability, I'm thinking, wow, this is like probably when your theater background comes in handy of like, we're improv right now.
I play music. It's hilarious. Depending on the scenario, when I do the Worship and Tech conference, I always end up playing Forrest Frank and they lose it. They're like, this is great. So we just have background music while we're doing the poll. And so it's really fun too, to even just change the music I'm playing. So I'll bring my little Bluetooth speaker.
Yeah.
And when I taught the rural broadband people in Boston, we played Earth, Wind, and Fire, and they loved it. You read the room and just set the tone. So I think that makes education a lot more enjoyable,
for sure,
than the way maybe we've done it in the past.
And there's that intentionality too of like, I'm going to take the time to potentially pivot what I had thought was the agenda for today to make you feel seen and make you feel invested in. So I love that you're taking that next level, not just coming in and saying, well, I have something to teach y'all. It's what do you want to know? So I think that's really, really cool. I would love to switch gears because I'm really curious and I would love to learn a little bit more about your 20-hour work week philosophy. If you can tell our listeners a little bit about that philosophy, and then also how that has to do with boundaries and having rest for mental wellness, things like that. I would love to hear about that and our listeners too.
Yeah, so I think when it comes to technology, if you just lead with tech tools and features, people kind of glaze over. And so I had to figure out a way to show people how important it was to learn how to use tech. And so I taught them that you can work less and you can live a more fulfilling life if you learn how to leverage technology. Because that tech is going to help stretch you further than you could do on your own. And so that's kind of where the 20-hour work week came from, is I realized that when I kind of pivoted careers, the work I was doing was super heady. And so 20 hours of that work was the equivalent of 40 hours of work in a different profession.
Right.
And so I started to think like, well, what would happen if I just essentially worked part-time for full-time income? Like, is that even possible? What does that look like? And so I did a ton of research and a ton of testing because I'm like, if this is possible, it needs to be sustainable.
Right.
And so I began to realize that part of what makes people unproductive in their jobs is that we actually spend half of our time trying to work in addition to working. So even if someone has a 40-hour workday, if you were to actually track them with, you know, a tech, you could use a tech tool. Toggle's a great one, but you would actually see with all the disruptions, whether it's meetings or phone calls or notifications and things like that, even just checking your phone, you actually only do 20 hours of productive work.
Wow.
So really what you have to cut is the distractions. Because if you did 20 deep focus hours of work, then you could get the same amount of work done. And so I started using different techniques to help with focus, to help with that accountability. And then I started to realize too, just listening to my body and just kind of looking at how things worked, I am tapped out by 3 o'clock.
Right.
You know, I'm
Truly.
like, oh, my best time is 10 to 3. I'm like, that is awesome. And so I thought, okay, well, what if I worked 10 to 3, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? Is that possible? And I tracked it, tested it, and it worked out. So some weeks I have to modify it a little bit. There's a Bible study I love going to on Tuesdays. And so I change it and work half day on Friday. But it evolves to, 20 hours a week. And so I think for most people, if you initially look at that and go, well, that's impossible, I could never do it, start to look at what are the things that you've committed to do that are not profit-producing activities or just aren't essential. Because when you start to weed some of that stuff off, you start to realize you have more time than you think. And so just giving yourself permission to say, this is when I work my best. This is when I can accomplish the most, and kind of sticking with that. You'd be surprised. You can probably do a shorter work week than you think.
I think that's a really good point too, because I feel like, especially in our culture, it's everyone's busy, but it's like truly we all have the same 24 hours in a day, and it's how are you using that intentionally? How are you leveraging that as well? So I really like that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I feel like ever since we started inventing things to make our lives easier, it's become great. Now we can do even more work,
right?
And just fill in that time. So
and I was guilty of that. I thought the name of the game was just how much can I shove in a day. So I used to be like an obsessive time blocker, and I'm like, okay, like I can just fit more and more because I'm so much more efficient. But at the same time, it's like, but I'm missing out on so much life. I'm not going outside. I'm not going to the gym. I'm not cooking my own food. And so you start to realize like, maybe having a more mindful start to the day instead of waking up in a panic and running around the house is a better way to live your life. And so it's really interesting. But that's the thing that resonates with people the most is I think post-COVID, people are burnt out and they want to figure out what are some ways that I can live a more meaningful life and not feel so frazzled and stretched thin.
100%.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry,
I was just going to say, maybe for someone that like, maybe they're at a job where they are not able to necessarily leverage tech to like create that balance. Are there any other strategies that you'd recommend that you can implement to kind of create that rest? You were talking a little bit about weeding out things in your life that are not necessary. Would you say like anything in addition to that?
Yeah, I think it's really important if your schedule is much more strict than it would be being self-employed. Like obviously I'm my own boss, so I can kind of create the schedule and plug myself in.
Right.
But if you have somebody else defining what your workday looks like, you have to take a step back and say, well, what do I have control over? Well, how I start my day, how I end my day, and so it might just be adding more joy to your life by scheduling joyful moments alongside the things that are mandatory. I try to tell my friends all the time, like joy doesn't just stumble across you. It happens intentionally. So it's like, did you put something on the calendar that you could actually look forward to? Or is the only thing on your calendar things that you're obligated to do? And so I think that especially when people transition from college to adulthood and they kind of have free reign over their time, we miss out on so much fun. Like I think back to like college and it was like, okay, if I had an extra hour, like I was going to a football game, I was hanging out, with a friend on campus, or there were always these impulsive fun moments that were easy because we were on campus together with our friends. But as soon as you graduate and everybody's spread apart and you're kind of doing your own thing, it's harder to make the board game nights happen or the karaoke moments. And so as adults, I think we have to get to the point where we acknowledge that and we're just as intentional with scheduling those coffee dates and scheduling, the trip to the bowling alley, if that's what you like, just like everything else, to make sure that fun is on the calendar just as much as your work hours are.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's so easy to let it get away from you and just get caught up in the busyness of life. But like putting it on the calendar, giving yourself something to look forward to, whether it's like a trip out of town, somewhere in town, or I'm going to sit down for 30 minutes and have a cup of coffee and just not look at my emails for whatever time, have that quiet time. I think you hit the nail on the head, 100%.
The power of having something to look forward to, like truly.
Yeah, and it can be something random. Yeah. A friend of mine a couple weeks ago, I heard about Garden Day and I'm like, I've never been to Garden Day. And that was right down the street in Boonesboro. And so I think that's the fun thing too, is you can be a tourist in your own town.
Truly.
And like there's enough going on that you probably have never experienced, you've never seen. Try a new restaurant, go to a new activity, do something out of the box that kind of breaks you out of the monotony of what you do every day. Even if it's going to pick strawberries, you'd be surprised. Touch some grass. And it really does help.
Beautiful thing.
Truly touches some grass. We love it. No, I think that's so important, especially in a very tech-focused world, a very like productivity is king over everything. In our culture, I think it's like so important to slow down and evaluate, okay, what makes life worth living and like what is bringing me joy and defining that for sure. I love that so much.
Yeah, I mean, I just like being an encouragement to people. I think that so many of us don't give ourselves permission to try something different. Because we feel like someone else needs to co-sign on our life. We feel like someone else needs to grant us permission to live the life that we want. And so when you give yourself the opportunity to say, I'm just going to give it a try. I'm just going to put myself out there. It's been so wild to me, the opportunities that my friends have experienced simply by being courageous enough to try. And trying may not be being self-employed. I mean, that is a very difficult way to make money in the beginning, especially if you don't come from a family that has previously run businesses.
Right.
But at the same time, even trying, a different profession, maybe you got your degree. Like, again, I got my degrees in theater. I would have never guessed I'm going to get 2 degrees in theater from Liberty and find myself in the tech world where I'm talking to product marketing managers about user interfaces and having the time of my life.
Right.
Who would have ever guessed that?
No, truly.
But I think being willing to just say, it's okay to be different. It's okay if this doesn't make sense to anyone. It's okay if I can't point around and see somebody else doing the same thing because this brings me joy and this is keeping the lights on. And if that's working for you, then go for it. And so it's surprising. People come around and even if they don't, that's okay. And that just opens up so many opportunities when that's not something that's a mandatory thing for you to keep going.
Right. And I think too, people are often, myself included too, but like people are so afraid to fail. And I think sometimes if we actually sit back and evaluate, okay, what is the worst case scenario of me stepping out this leap of faith of trying something new or going for something different? Worst case scenario often is not like as bad as we think it is. And it's like, okay, so if that were to happen and it doesn't pan out, life will go on and it will be okay, truly. So I think that's really precious that you're encouraging in that way of just going for it and seeing, okay, what brings you joy and why not go for it and be bold. So I think that's really great. Like with your example of, you saw people in the tech industry, but not here in Lynchburg, and how you're using that and being an innovator in that way in our area. So I think that's really wonderful. So good.
And it brings me so much enjoyment.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the thing. It's like, opening yourself up to new opportunities and new way of looking at things, you would just be surprised.
Mhm.
And so now, like I was saying, it's taken me to Iowa, it's taken me to Boston, it's taken me to LA. And so I've just got my little magnets from the different states I've gone to on the fridge. And I'm like, this is hilarious that talking to my computer is the reason why I'm on this plane. But this has given me an opportunity to see people from all over the country and learn how they're doing things in their backyard. And so I'm really grateful for that. But then, when it's over, I get on the plane and I come back home, or I take the train back and I come back home, and I love living here as well. And so just because you live in a small town doesn't mean you have to have a small perspective on the world.
Right.
Like you can create big ideas in small towns.
Yep. Don't shrink yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's so true. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool hearing your story. Like, I love hearing stories like this where you never would have thought, because that's just how God works, right? Like you think your plan is heading this direction, and then all of a sudden, like, here's this detour, and you're like, oh, didn't see this, but we're gonna step out in faith and like take it, and it takes you to Iowa and all these other states where you're doing your thing and finding so much fulfillment and joy out of it. What a gift that is.
And nothing is wasted, for everybody who graduates and goes, man, I thought I knew what I was going to be when I grow up, and that's not what I'm doing now.
Yep.
Everything that you've experienced, everything that you've learned is a part of the process. Nothing is wasted, and nothing is just on accident. And I think that's the beautiful thing about just God's providence, is just like, God knows. God knows where this is going, even if you don't know how the story ends.
Yeah, truly. I think one thing sometimes when I'm overthinking my future is I have to remember, nothing takes God by surprise. Like, he knows what's going to happen, so it's okay and it's held. But I think that's a really beautiful thing of holding your life and your career with like open hands and a surrender of, hey, this is yours. Like, use this however you want to. So I think that's a really beautiful thing. And I think sometimes, especially being a college graduate, sometimes we graduate thinking, okay, well, I studied this, so my life is going to go this certain way. But that's not necessarily like what the Lord has. So I think that's really wonderful that you're so much cheering on the idea of, why not try? Life is too short. I love that. That's awesome. I truly am so grateful, one, for you and just like the content that you're creating, but the why behind the content too. I think that's a really beautiful thing. And I think it's a great thing to have voices like yours on the internet. So I'm really grateful for what you do in your work. I've also been just so happy to have our conversation today. This has been such a joy. Where can our listeners connect with you, follow you, all the above, plug away, whatever you want to share?
Yeah, so the simplest thing to do if you want to watch my content is go to Bootstrap Biz Advice on YouTube. You can also just type in LaShonda Brown, and that'll take you directly to it. I am so close to 100K. So guys, if you're hearing this and you're not subscribed, go ahead and
get
subscribe.
Her to 100K.
Get me there. But you can also go to LaShondaBrown.com, and I have a thing called the Bootstrap Club. And it's just my email list. And it's where I share the things behind the scenes that I don't post on Instagram. And I think it's really helpful to not just see the finished product, but also the process. So if you want that honest take on small business online, then join the Bootstrap Club. It's free. Just, name an email. But again, you can go to Bootstrap Biz Advice on YouTube and subscribe.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Truly, it was such a joy having you. So thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you.
No problem. Thanks again for having me.
Yay.
The Mended Futures Podcast is a production of 518 Family Services, formerly Patrick Henry Family Services in Lynchburg, Virginia. Our mission is to build communities of faithful relationships that ensure children are safe and families are restored.
Mended Futures are at the heart of who we are, our stories, our hope, and our vision. They aren't just stories we tell, they're something you can help create. When you give to 518, you're not just making a donation, you're stepping into someone's story. You're helping a family find hope, and you're helping our community heal.
Because of the generosity of people like you, reconciliation is happening in our community each day. Our donors further the mission of seeing every child with a thriving family supported by a faithful community.
We want to see Mended Futures for families in Lynchburg, Virginia, and the 4 surrounding counties. So we invite you to check out our website, 518.org/givemended. That's FIVE18.org/givemended. Join us in the ministry of reconciliation.